Whoa, this could all end right here. That was what J.R.Moehringer said when he was having a bit of a confrontation with Prince Harry over a Zoom call about a section of his book Spare. And you can tell from that he was quite concerned that he would be thrown off the project if he pushed Harry a bit too far. And, you know, obviously financial considerations made him not want to be thrown off the project. And at that point, he'd already put 2 years' work into the project. So you could imagine that he was fearful. But that brought up the revelation to me that obviously that's why the book has too many writers. It has too many voices and not enough editors. So the section of the book that they were arguing over was that point when Harry was actually in a simulated terrorist capture exercise, and him and other men were put through horrible things. It was a real simulated terrorist capture, and with all that would entail, you know, rough handling, a lot of psychological warfare. I mean, credit to him, he made it through to the end of the exercise. Many people didn't. So he's thrown up against the wall in this exercise, and a horrible thing is said about his mum, Princess Diana. And he actually reacted to his simulated captors at the time with a retort, and he wanted that in the book. And J.R.Moehringer said, no, that's all about you, that's inane, that's uninteresting. And he gave him this lecture about how memoir isn't actually about you, Harry, it's about carving stories out of your life. It all sounds like a load of codswallop, doesn't it? I mean, of course a memoir is about his story, but obviously the retort wasn't very good and he didn't want to include it. So, of course, I was intrigued and I just had to look it up, so I'll share that part with you. And then we'll go into depth in this article that the ghostwriter wrote in the New Yorker. So, like I said, they had Harry up against the wall, and while they had him sort of up against the wall and he felt like he couldn't breathe, they said, "Your mother was pregnant when she died, eh? With your sibling, a Muslim baby." And this is where Harry supposedly retorted, but in the book he said nothing, but I screamed at her with my eyes. Okay. And then the exercise ends and he's taken off for debrief. Now, this is where I find this shocking on so many levels, because in the debrief, they say to him, "Hard for us to find something about you that you'd be shocked we knew." Now, this is in the debrief. This isn't continuing psychological warfare. This is supposedly people helping him come down from the exercise and the trauma from the exercise. Now, Harry makes the point that the soldier that went before him that actually failed the exercise crumpled when he was confronted about something in his past that was true. And then Harry then goes on to tell this story. Now, I am not implying that's true about Princess Diana. I'm not. I'm saying that it's in Harry's book. And if he's going to put that in his book, he needs to clarify that moment in his book, because he needs to go on further and say, oh, despite the exercise being over, they were still trying to traumatize me, or the person who was debriefing me still obviously had it in for me, or there was actually truth in that and I was surprised they knew, whatever. But you can't just leave it hanging out there like that, a statement like that about his mother in his book. And then I thought, well, imagine William. Imagine William. The fact that that was in the book. So you see, there are still shocking things in this book that I hadn't even taken in properly yet. It's quite shocking. So we'll go back to how J.R.Moehringer actually first had the contact with Harry and first had that first Zoom call. And his first impression of Harry was someone that was still grieving his mother. Now, the interesting thing is that the ghostwriter had genuinely just lost his mother, and they bonded over the grief of losing their mothers. But Harry's mum died 23 years earlier, and the ghostwriter points that out. Now, if I'm bonding with someone that is still heavily grieving someone that died over 23 years ago, I would think that they were mentally vulnerable. And I would be very careful about accepting a project with them where they're bearing their all and bearing their soul after just having a major ruction with their family. I mean, it's not very responsible, is it? And it's very easy to exploit someone like that. I'm not suggesting J.R.Moehringer exploited anyone by being his ghostwriter. I'm just saying it's easy to exploit someone like that, so you would have to tread very, very carefully. Now, the other interesting thing about that initial Zoom call was that he said that Harry didn't seem to know what he wanted to include in the book. Now, that indicates to me someone that isn't even sure they want to write a book. So whose idea was that? Whose idea was that really? Because the shocking thing is that this book was started to be written in the summer of 2020. Now, I know a lot of you would already know that, but that timeline, they finished their last engagements in the UK in March 2020. And here we are, summer 2020, and J.R.Moehringer's already, the contracts are signed, he's already starting to write. So that's June. So in the 3 months between finishing up in the UK, buying their new home, going through all that, he's having this Zoom call, and then there's an agreement that he'll start writing. Now, this is the year that Queen Elizabeth II gave them to check if they really wanted to proceed with leaving the royal family. And this book is commenced. Now, Harry would have known that when this book really got published, that there was no way back. So, of course, he wasn't sure what he wanted to include in it. And he also said to J.R.Moehringer, take your time, I'm in no hurry, I'm in no hurry at all. Of course not until his grandmother died. But gee, it makes you wonder where the push for this little project really came from. Now, J.R.Moehringer takes us back through his early journalistic career and how he discovered at a little paper that when he wrote a column for another writer who was a bit worse for wear after a night on the town, he discovered that he found it easier to write when he wrote for someone else, when he ghost wrote, in other words. But he seems to hate his profession. He goes into great pains to describe how much ghostwriters hate being ghostwriters. He's gone out for a dinner and they're all complaining about their authors. It's interesting that they're the ghostwriters and they call the people that they're writing the books for authors, which seems a little bit about topsy-turvy really, doesn't it? But so we'll call them authors too. And he's saying how most authors really resent their ghostwriters and treat them really, really horribly, and how they resent paying them when the actual project is finished, and how most authors spend their whole life guarding their secrets, and then these ghostwriters come along and delve into them with all their questions and get them to expose all their secrets. So it's a really interesting study into this ghostwriter who just manages to whinge and complain constantly. He even whinges about leaks, about the fact that his identity was revealed. He has a lot of the same sort of resentments as his subject in Spare. But there's an underlying vibe in the whole piece because he goes on to talk about ghostwriting Andre Agassi's book. Now, I've read that, and that's why I was so surprised that Prince Harry's book Spare was so bad, because the Andre Agassi book is great. It really is written in, you feel like it's Andre Agassi talking. And the interesting point that he makes is that in 2 very tough years writing Andre Agassi's book, he didn't have a crossword with him. He had very tense, hard-working situations. But he said Andre Agassi never treated him badly, never yelled at him, was never harsh. Never a harsh word was spoken over those 2 years. And the clear implication is that there were many harsh words with Harry. And you also get the impression, because he's constantly reminding us in this article just how much he knows. And he also keeps reminding us in this article that ghostwriters must not speak. Ghostwriters must be seen and not heard, actually not even seen and not even heard. He's always talking about the importance that they don't speak out and they don't reveal what they know. But throughout this whole article, he's constantly making much of the fact of how much he knows. I get the impression, even though he talks on about how through their fights with Harry, he's displaying great loyalty and courage, and he's talking to him truthfully, and, how Harry can trust him as a friend because there's no greater friend than someone who will stand up against you for the good of your memoir, and all this justification going on. And I really get the impression, I might be wrong, but all through this article, I feel resentment. I feel like he feels like he was bullied. And I also feel in a strange way it was almost an audition piece for part 2. He doesn't mention Meghan meddling in the writing of the book, but I wonder how many of those late night Zoom sessions with Harry fighting for edits that he wants are after long conversations with his very helpful, well-read, highly intellectual partner, Meghan. So there you go. That pretty much wraps up the article in the New Yorker. It is just another person, it seems to me, with a lot to complain about. It's a wah article. And the poor man, I don't think he should ghostwrite any more books because he clearly doesn't enjoy the process. He clearly finds the authors that he has to deal with extremely difficult. And, it just feels like pulling teeth. Maybe he should go back to writing another novel. But it was interesting, and it was a great insight into the whole process and how Harry approached it. And it makes you wonder, it really does make you wonder that anyone that committed themselves to writing a memoir with a ghostwriter, to not even be sure what they want to include in the book, that is a scary sort of position to be in. And he actually makes the point that through the process of writing this book, that even Harry was surprised at how much he revealed. So let me know what you think about that story and what was found out from reading that article. And let me know if you think that J.R.Moehringer is actually going to write any additional chapters for the paperback edition of Spare, or whether you actually think that book 2 is on its way. I'll see you again very soon. Bye.